Usually, in the world of sports, a professional athlete is not only one of the best athletes in the world, but they were among the best on their college team, definitely the best on their high school team, and so on and so on. But what happens when you're not only the best athlete among any particular group, but also the hardest working and arguably the most intelligent? Well, then you'd be set up for success anywhere you decided to focus your efforts. And our subject today did just that. This is what you don't know about the Honorable Byron White. Welcome to What You Don't Know About Sports, where we delve into the forgotten stories, teams, and athletes of sports history and question widely held takes on today's sports. I'm Blake, and this is Matt.
Howdy.
Today, we're going to tell you about the football star turned Rhodes Scholar, turned Naval Intelligence Officer, turned attorney, turned U.S. Supreme Court Justice, Byron White. Before I ask you a question, I want to make a big deal about something really quickly. We have surpassed our 2-year mark since we published our first episodes. We posted
Happy birthday to us.
Happy birthday. We are like that drooling toddler entering that really angry stage of our lives. You know what I mean?
That's right. We're going to start throwing stuff. We're going to have some tantrums here lately.
It's gonna be great. A feeling we're going to go on a tantrum today, and not necessarily because of the person we're going to talk about, but something that they were involved in, and it's going to be fantastic. My question for you, though, is who's your favorite athlete to voluntarily walk away from sports, arguably in the middle of their prime, to either do something else or just to walk away for one reason or another?
Well, I think I was gonna answer this question by saying Tom Brady, just to be a smart person. But the actual better answer, given recent news, is when Brett Favre stepped away from playing high level football to go fraudulently steal money from the United States government as a second career.
Pretty good at that.
No. No, I think Jim Brown is like the go-to GOAT poster child for early retirement. A couple of running backs in that category, I think, all fit. Something about him though is just he definitely was one of the best running backs of all time, and then dropped out early to go be an activist and to just take care of himself. There's no need to keep getting hit if you don't have to. So I definitely understand it, but I think he always comes up in the discussion about guys that bowed out early.
100%. I think I have a few more recent examples, not necessarily to pursue a second career per se, but to walk away for the betterment of themselves in one way or another. From football in particular, the more recent examples would be like a Calvin Johnson, a Luke Kuechly, and Andrew Luck. He was injury reasons. Luke Kuechly, I think, was concussion reasons. He had a lot of concussions. Calvin Johnson just surprised everybody, I think. He just chugged up the deuces and he walked away. Good for him. For being that confident in his career and being comfortable with it. But our subject today didn't. He actually walked away from professional football twice. And still could have, and still made an all-decades team, if you can believe it. We'll get there in a few minutes. The subject today is Byron Raymond White. His nickname was Whizzer. He earned that at the University of Colorado as a football player, but he was born in Fort Collins, Colorado, to Maud Elizabeth and Alpha Albert White. We should have known then, when his dad's name was Alpha, the kind of person he would be.
Somebody named a man Alpha?
This would have been in the 1900s, 1890s, something like that.
everything about this, it screams like a 1950s sitcom. I know he's a little bit earlier than that, where he's doing some of this stuff, but like his mother's name is Maud. His nickname is Whizzer.
Mm-hmm.
It's like Leave It to Beaver, just with a different situation.
He he graduated from a high school with only 6 people in his class. Very, 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 very small town, even smaller high school. He was offered a scholarship to the University of Colorado Boulder due to being the valedictorian of that 6-person high school class. Apparently, this is a common thing with Colorado Boulder. They did that with every high school in the state. They offered him a full ride. Every valedictorian at every high school. I don't know if they still do that, but apparently that's how he got it. His brother,
wow,
White's younger brother, also did the same thing. He also graduated from the University of Colorado as valedictorian, which should not be a surprise to anyone. This theme will continue. Foreshadowing. Also, but while at Colorado, he was a standout football player. He was the Heisman runner-up in 1937 to Clint Frank, the Yale quarterback at the time. He led the University of Colorado to an 8-0 regular season as a senior. He lost in the Cotton Bowl to Rice, who was for some reason 5-3-2. That's that regular season, and still played and was the favorite to win the game. So I don't know who Colorado played that season, but it must not have been very impressive.
Who'd they play, Paul?
Stop.
You know. But who did they play? So fun fact about this Cotton Bowl trip, he didn't want to go. Byron White, star player, runner-up for the Heisman, because he wanted to stay home and study. So equal parts athlete and giant nerd.
Huge.
Did not want to forsake his studies to go play the bowl game. Bowl game's relatively new at that time, too. So it's not like they had this rich tradition. But he, very early on, is setting the precedent for, like, opting out of bowl games. Tried to get the whole team to opt out of the bowl game, but then the coaches promised him that practice would not interfere with his studies. He'd be able to take his finals, have a good time. And so he kind of acquiesced to the bowl game situation. But yeah, didn't fully want to be there.
But as I already stated, he graduated from the University of Colorado as their class valedictorian, and so it didn't affect him too much.
He had reason. There was a good reason he was doing that. Yeah.
Also, during his senior season in 1937, he was a consensus All-American. He led the nation in scoring, rushing, total offense, and if someone can tell me what this means, I'll love you forever. All-purpose running. Not all-purpose yards, not yards from scrimmage. Footballfoundation.org says that he led the nation in all-purpose running. I could not figure out if that was some sort of stat that is no longer used anymore. Maybe that was rushing plus return yards. I don't know what happened, but they say that that Byron White averaged 246 yards per game in all-purpose running, which was a record until 1988, which was the year Barry Sanders took over college football, which kind of makes sense, but his math and this math isn't adding up. So we don't really know, but regardless, he was dominant. Absolutely dominant. Yeah. Averaging 246 yards per game on the ground one way or the other.
Yeah, there's no way around dominance there. Doesn't matter how you're counting it. 240 yards from however it is, 240 yards is something to be proud of.
He was also on the University of Colorado men's basketball team, who reached the NIT finals in 1938. They lost that game, but they did get to travel cross country and play in Madison Square Garden in the NIT final that year, which was pretty cool also.
Which, if you followed along with all of our episodes, would have been runner-up for the national championship, honestly, at that time. Yeah. So, awesome.
Very sick. He was drafted 4th overall in the 1938 NFL draft by the Pittsburgh Pirates. Wait a minute. I said Pittsburgh Pirates. That's because that was their name before they changed their name to become the Steelers. He also became a Rhodes Scholar a few days after being drafted. He intended to go to Oxford University prior to being drafted, and Oxford allowed him to delay his entry into the program so that he could stay in the United States and play NFL football. So he signed with the Pirates, which is really weird to say, but he signed with Pittsburgh. He signed with the pro football team in Pittsburgh. He led the league in rushing, and he became the highest paid player in the league as a rookie. He became a first team All-Pro in his rookie season in 1938. He then voluntarily left the NFL to go to Oxford University, boarded a ship across the ocean with every intention of spending 3 years in England studying at Oxford. But unfortunately, there was a small disagreement going on. Not going on in 1938, but just about to start, called World War II. Kind of got in the way.
Yeah.
And so when Germany invaded Poland, Byron White said, "I'm out." And he came back home. When he got back to the United States, he enrolled in Yale Law School. Now, I did read this. He gave an interview in the late 90s or the early 2000s, just before he passed. He passed in 2002. But just before he passed, he gave an interview. And he said that he was actually on a train to Boston to enroll in Harvard Law School. He got sick on the train ride. And when he got off the train, he was in New Haven, Connecticut. And that's how he ended up at Yale.
It's a sign.
Right? That Boston's too cold for you, or what?
That's but don't go there. Stop before.
No, it's fine. I'm obligated to say that. No, I'm just kidding. It's actually cool.
Yeah. It is a good
But
place.
naturally, he had the highest grades in his class during his first year at Yale. But he actually turned down an editorship at the Yale Law Journal to go where? Back to the NFL.
Can't get it out of your blood.
I don't know if he just I don't know if like he was just still thought he was prime athlete, which he was. But like you've got Yale Law School and an editorship at their law review, and you're you're the smartest dude in every room you walk in, and you want to go bang heads with a bunch of gorillas. Like, what do you? I can't follow that logic necessarily, but of course I'm not him. I just wonder, reading this and learning about him and stuff, like why walk, like you went to Oxford with every intention on staying. So like, did you not intend to never play football again anyway? But then when you got back, you thought, this is my chance. I don't know.
Well, we know from plenty of stories from athletes where they retire and then decide that it was the wrong decision. They missed the locker room. They missed the team aspect. He obviously is, like you said, he's the most athletic person, the smartest person everywhere he goes. And there's something about a person that achieves that level of greatness at anything that just wants more. Right? That especially he's young. He's young. It's not like he's 35 doing this. He's still a young dude. And so that obviously plays part of it too, right? I can still go. I can do whatever I want to. I'll do everything.
And he did.
I'll take over the whole
world. And he
world,
almost did.
Right? And so and he did. And so I follow it doesn't make sense, but I follow that he's like, well, I'm getting the best grades at Yale, so why don't I go play football and see if I can get the most yards again?
It was like school was not a challenge for him anymore.
I need a different challenge.
Yeah, I can see that part of it. Mm-hmm. So he returned to the NFL. He would play 2 more seasons with the Detroit Lions while enrolled at Yale Law School. He did both, which, if you think about it, the NFL season was only, 8, 10, 12 games, not very long.
Something like shorter than
it's shorter than 17, for God's sake. So shorter than 17 games. So it didn't take too much of his time. If he was such a natural athlete, he could probably just walk on the field cold and outrun everybody anyway.
Probably.
But he would come back in 1940 and he would lead the league in rushing again. He was a first team All-Pro in 1940. And then he would continue that success, not by leading the league in rushing a third time, but he became second team All-Pro in 1941. It was at this point that the United States entered the World War, the reason he left England in the first place, and then he enlisted in the Navy because, like Why not? So he enlisted in the Navy in 1942. He served as an intelligence officer. He was stationed in the Pacific Theater. He rose to the rank of lieutenant commander. Not surprising either. He apparently also wrote he probably wrote a lot of intelligence reports, but one of the intelligence reports that he did write was the aftermath following the sinking of future President JFK's PT-109, which was a patrol torpedo boat that JFK was in charge of at the time, that was rammed and sank. And JFK saved a bunch of lives, and it was great. And Byron White, allegedly, and Byron White wrote the intelligence report summarizing that incident, which is that's also in line with a few things to come in Byron White's future. He was also awarded 2 Bronze Stars and was honorably discharged in 1945. What do you think he did when he got back? He did not go to play football. That's what he didn't do.
Football. Oh, no. Okay.
He returned to Yale, and he finished law school within 12 months, graduating top of his class. Because,
of course,
why not? He would then go on at this point, I will say, his professional sports career has ended. Okay. He probably could have went back and did whatever he wanted to, but I think at this point he figured out he was done. He served as a law clerk under Chief Justice Fred Vinson on the U.S. Supreme Court from 1946 to 1947. He then entered private practice in Denver, worked there for about 15 years. During that time, he chaired JFK's presidential campaign in Colorado in 1960. And then he would serve as JFK's U.S. Deputy Attorney General, second to Robert F. Kennedy, who was the Attorney General for the United States at that time. And this is where his sports career is over, and my time talking is almost over. But before I'm done, do you have any thoughts on all of that? Because I want to wrap his sports career up nicely before we move on.
Obviously, the modern parallel, not quite to the heights that we're going to see Byron White go, but the modern day parallel is Myron Rolle, played at Florida State at a very high level, also was a Rhodes Scholar, and took the opportunity to go be a Rhodes Scholar rather than the NFL route. Is now an accomplished neurosurgeon, I think. So, which is important because that's the level of injury that we're all scared of in football, right? Yeah. So he's still involved a little bit there. That's the role, and it is. I'm just kidding about the allegedly on the JFK. I know there's conspiracy theories about the whole.
His entire life is a conspiracy theory because he didn't live long enough to defend him.
Well, and he's a Kennedy, and so there's a lot going on there. But yeah, no, just one of a kind of guy would be a good movie story. Just this beginnings, right? You're from a small town. You got 6 people in your high school.
Dad's name is Alpha.
That gets you the ticket. That gets you the ticket to become the alpha, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
I'm never saying that again. Of everywhere you go, right? You're the leader of the football team. You almost lead a mutiny, showing a little bit of political ability, savviness at that time. Before going to a bowl game, you go to the bowl game. All of that stuff is impressive on the surface.
It's ridiculous, right? Like, as I attempted to emulate in the intro, he could be the best at anything he wanted to do. Like, absolutely the best at anything he could do. He's already, like, just in the story, he's on his way to being the best. He could have been the best football player if he had wanted to be the best basketball player. He was a fantastic attorney and Supreme Court justice. With glowing reviews all around. We're going to get into one of those in particular.
Yeah. And I'm not surprised that he left football. I'm more surprised that he came back than he left, because one thing that I just thought about is that's the time period he's playing football. Guys they're not making millions of dollars. They're working a job in the off season. They may be working a job during the season. So they're making no money, really. So it doesn't surprise me that he leaves with the future and the kind of future and ability he had. still, the coming back is a little bit surprising, but I also get that.
Yeah, it could be one of those challenge things, but you never know, right? Not in his shoes, so I can't speak for him. Before I turn it over to you to explain a very particular instance that is very relevant in today's sporting world, we have a trivia question.
Oh yeah, yes sir.
And
double black diamond level.
It's I'm sorry in advance. You may spout this off the top of your head, and I will be very impressed because you are slightly older than I am. So we'll see what happens.
Okay.
I said slightly.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
That was nice. That was nice.
Yeah.
So one thing I didn't tell you about Byron White in his original bio that I've already tried to explain was that he finished second in the Heisman voting in 1937. I did say that. Just kidding.
You did say that.
There's only been one person who played football at the University of Colorado to win the Heisman Trophy. Who was it?
Okay. So because you've given me this hint without meaning to, so I'm assuming it has to be somebody who has played in the last 30 years. Is that
correct? A question? Because the answer is yes.
Yes. Okay. Did this person? Okay, obviously, did this person play in the National Football League?
Yes.
Did this person happen to play both quarterback and wide receiver in the National Football League?
That's a good question. I don't think so.
The answer is yes.
Are you sure?
No, I could be wrong.
It doesn't look like it. It doesn't look like it.
Did this person play quarterback at the University of Colorado?
I don't think so.
What? Oh.
Hold on.
Oh, no.
Hold on.
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
Hey, now. You can't.
No.
Can't feed.
It says running back.
Oh, no. Then I don't know this person.
I could be lying.
Okay. Now we got to do some more work.
I'm working on it. I'm working on the work.
I had in my head who this was as soon as you asked the question, and now you're saying that it's not that guy, and this is trouble.
I cannot find. I didn't think so, and I cannot find an instance in where he has any sort of quarterback statistics.
What team did he play for in the NFL?
You want the list?
Oh, yeah.
He was drafted by the Bears.
Oh, no. Okay, I got to readjust.
Then played for the Browns, the Raiders, the Packers. Okay, so he was on the Bears for 3 years. He was listed on the roster for the Browns, the Raiders, and the Packers, all in the year 1999. Then played in the XFL, I believe, and then came back to the 49ers at some point, and then went back to the XFL.
Okay. So I was definitely just trying to set myself up to be in a smart tale to say that there was Cordell Stewart, and it's not.
It is not Cordell Stewart because
at all. Not even
he
close.
did not finish second. He did not win the Heisman. He finished 13th.
Yeah. Cordell Stewart finished
in 13th. The Heisman voting that year. So in the same year that this person won it, Cordell Stewart finished. Yeah, 13th.
I do have a name. Does this person have? Oh man. Okay, is this person's initials 2 letters that are sequential in the alphabet?
Yes.
It's okay. I don't know exactly. This is going to be one of those times I'm going to say a name and I don't remember what the last consonant is. Like I may screw up royally both names, but it's going to be in the ballpark.
It's going to be close.
Of the correct answer. Is this It's either Rashawn or Rashad, something like that. Salam.
Rashawn Iman Salam
Let's go.
was him. Yep. He was a
Yeah, he
running
had
back. He played for 4 seasons in the NFL, won the Heisman Trophy at Colorado. He tragically died by suicide about 6 years ago. But
he
yeah.
had a lot of trouble in the NFL. He was in that era with a lot of legal issues, which is part of the reason why he had so many teams he played for, and so many teams he played for in 1999, because he had tons of talent, but always was kind of off the field in trouble.
Yeah.
So yeah,
He was the youngest player in NFL history, apparently, to rush for 1,000 yards at the time. Fantastic in college. Yeah, had his difficulties in the professional ranks, but nonetheless is the only player from the University of Colorado Boulder to have won the Heisman Trophy. He won it. Byron White is actually the only person to finish second, and Eric Bieniemy is the only person to finish third.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. I had forgot that that's where Bieniemy played. I just thought he came out of nowhere to be offensive genius. But yeah, you didn't think I was going to get that, and I gave you two.
Yeah,
I gave you two Colorado Buffaloes.
You did. Cordell Stewart finished 13th.
Yeah, I didn't think you'd won the Heisman, but in my head, I was like, "That's the only guy I know from Colorado. It's got to be right."
No, good.
All right. So the second reason, in addition, Blake's already hinted at the heights that Byron White is going to get to. I'm just going to go ahead and kind of spoil it for you. Byron White, because partly of his connections to JFK and also because he is just that smart, ends up becoming a Supreme Court justice in 1962. Now, if you go and look at his rulings, regardless of your politics and social beliefs, you're going to find some that you agree with and some that you disagree with. We don't particularly care one way or the other, because we're only going to worry about one particular Supreme Court case that has had widespread repercussions since it happened. And that's going to be the NCAA versus the Board of Regents of the University of Oklahoma and Georgia. This is the one we mentioned back in our conference realignment episode that kind of blew the floodgates open for everything that we have today, which is wild and chaotic and crazy. And so here's a little bit about this case. The University of Pennsylvania, allegedly, there's some shrouded mystery. Even in the Supreme Court case filings themselves, there's some disagreement about who was the first school to televise a game. But a lot of times, the University of Pennsylvania gets credit for that. As far back as 1938, Penn was putting games on TV. In the 1940s, the entire decade, they played all of their home games on television for that 10 years, which eventually, as the medium continued to grow, schools saw that was a thing you could do. Other teams began investigating the situation, and the NCAA itself commissioned a study on the effects of TV. That study found that televised games had a negative effect on attendance at games in other locations. So in other words, any game on television lowers the attendance at every other game being played at that time. That's what the study found. If you're a soccer person, you may be aware in England, to combat this, they do a 3 p.m. blackout. All the games that play at 3 p.m. local, 10 a.m. here in the States, are not shown in England at all. You're supposed to be going to your local team, your lower division team, to go support them. Don't stay at home and watch TV. Go watch a game yourself. Same logic here. And even today we talk about, people talk about, like, why would I go sit in a line to get in, sit in 100-degree weather, pay expensive prices for food, when I can stay at home and do all of that and watch the same game, right? So we have this idea that attendance is lower because of TV. And that caused the NCAA to be hesitant on granting TV rights. And so what they did is they created a football television committee to handle the television idea. That committee came up initially with four rules technically, There would be one televised game every Saturday. The teams that would participate in that game would share the money with the NCAA, and no team could appear more than once per season. The NCAA, part of their mission statement, part of their job is to make sure rules and teams have fair shakes at things, try to keep the competition playing field level. That's the best way they thought they could do it. And these tenets, which are three, I don't know why I said four a second ago, but these tenets remained in place for the most part for the better part of 30 years with very slight alterations. They did up the number of appearances you could make from one a season to 6 over 2 years, so they could get the bigger name teams in more games. They also allowed regional games, so they would have more than one on a Saturday. You could show this game or you could show this game based on where you were located. And they even upped the number of games. By 1981, there were 242 televised games that season. So it's not like they just said, this week is Oklahoma, Texas, and then neither of you can ever be on TV again. Doesn't matter who you play. They just tried to keep a level playing field for the most part.
And they, I feel like those first three things are fairly reasonable, right? You only get one televised game per Saturday because the TV medium was not what it is today. They didn't have red zone in 1950. And so the team's sharing with money with the NCAA. It's like, oh yeah, you're the governing body. We're kind of playing for you anyway. You get some of the money. No team would appear more than once per season. Cool. You get your one shining light. But then that only allows for, 16 teams, 20 teams, 24 teams, however many games they played. And so even that's not really fair. And so upping the number to 242 by 1981, it's like TV's starting to come along, become more mainstream and stuff. But even then, it's not equal, right? Because some teams never made it on TV. Some teams had multiple, and it just depended on how good you were. But then that slowly leads on and on and on all through history to, not to go too far, but to what we see today, where some teams and conferences get the benefit of the doubt more than others. And I'm going to leave it at that.
Yeah. Their initial start with SEC. And so in this particular case, this isn't out of the norm, by the way, for sports leagues. Like people who are as young as their 40s will gladly tell you about how there used to only be one baseball game in the entire country per week. Other sport, the NBA didn't even have the finals shown live until the 80s. So this is not like a new or out of the norm thing that the NCAA was doing. I will tell you that one of the complaints in the court case that ends up going to the Supreme Court was that in 1981, Oklahoma played USC in a top 5 matchup that was shown on 200 ABC affiliates across the country. 4 ABC affiliates chose to show the Citadel play App State instead. And all 4 teams received the same cut of the money, which was a complaint that the schools had. They said, I was on 200 things. I had the clearly bigger game. Why don't I get more of the money? The NCAA said, no, our rules say we get a cut. Y'all 4 get a cut. Everybody gets a cut. That's it. It should also be noted that all of these rules were agreed to by all member institutions. Some of the agreement was more cordial than others. When it first came to fruition, Penn said, absolutely not. We're going to continue to show our own TV games. Thank you. This is our idea. Yeah. And so the NCAA said, again, based on their rules, Penn, you're in bad standing then, and we're going to sanction you and anybody that plays you on TV. And so their 4 opponents that were supposed to play at Penn said, well, if that's the case, then we're not going. Penn decided then to change their mind and go along with the NCAA's plan. Kind of heavy-handed, still agreeing to the rules.
Though. Maybe that's what people should do to Notre Dame, being off on NBC by themselves and stuff, like thinking they're special. We could just refuse to go to South Bend and play them,
Yes, if we're stating personal opinions, it's what we all should do to the SEC and Big 12. But that's just my opinion, and so let's not let that color the proceedings, I guess. But anyway, it's also important here to remember, and this is going to be something that comes up in the case itself. One of the NCAA's arguments is that they are a membership that is completely elective. You choose to be an NCAA member, and at any moment, with no notice, you are allowed to no longer be an NCAA member. You can leave. A whole group of schools can leave and go do their own thing whenever they want. And the only rule is that if you are an NCAA member, you're not allowed to play a non-NCAA member. That's the only rule about it. You can leave whenever you want to. So the NCAA is going to argue, follow the rules that you agree to, or leave and make your own rules. And you should know that this is different in a sense from pro sports, in a sense that these members aren't franchises kind of beholden to the league. It's not entirely possible for the New York Yankees and the LA Dodgers to just decide they don't like the way Major League Baseball is operating and we're going to bounce. Some trademarks have to be worked out. The collective bargaining agreement prevents that. You can't just do it. But in college sports, anybody's free to go whenever they want to. That's different. The thing that is the same is the NCAA's role in all of this is filling the same role as the commissioner does in a professional sport. And what I mean by that is the entity that you get mad at in place of being mad at the actual members that make up the league itself. For instance, when Jay Billis is sitting around talking about how terrible the NCAA is, whether he's right or wrong, he's actually criticizing Coach K, the athletic director at Duke, and the president of Duke, but the NCAA fills the role so he doesn't have to, right? He can make fun of this nameless, faceless body while keeping his hands clean of the people he actually likes. Because it is the coaches who sit on advisory boards and competition committees. It's the athletic directors who propose ideas. And ultimately, it's the presidents who pass all the legislation the NCAA does. So it's not like that the schools that are upset couldn't change the rules if they wanted to. They need to get a lot of support, but they could have done it.
They could have done it then. I don't know that it's possible to try and break off from the NCAA now. Like at this, I mean, it's like in pro sports. It's a little different, obviously, but it's like pro sports. It's like, oh, look, the XFL is going to attempt to rival the NFL and steal players, or like, no, that's silly. Like you can't, like the entity in the NCAA and the major professional sports leagues in America, most of them are all so big and have so much support and have so much backing. You can't just like start one off the ground from scratch and think it's going to be equal to the existing, right? Like in 1903 or whatever it was, when somebody was like, hey, National League, you suck. We're making the American League and we're going to pay our people a heck of a lot more money than you're paying your people. They actually got people to leave to come over. And then the NL was like, oh, I guess we need to do so. Leave the NFL. Go ahead. Roger's going to tell him, like, Roger will show him where the door is and be like, good luck. Like, that's not going to happen. It's not possible.
I do think for as far as that scenario goes, if the current big Division I football playing schools wanted to go be sanctioned by the college football playoff all the way through instead of the NCAA, like I think it would work. I think the NCAA would also say, okay, then goodbye in all of our sports. And they would lose a chunk of money, and it would not go well. I'll just say this: you are right in that they could try it and it would succeed in air quotes. But I agree with you. At some point along the way, we're all going to say this is trying to be professional football. We all have professional football. This isn't that, and so goodbye.
Let's not be silly.
And also the NFL would just say, okay, then we're going to expand to all places that play college football and put you out of business.
Sorry.
Because we will. Yeah, I'm with you on that. So yeah, just remember that this is all things that people agreed to, and they're suing over things they agreed to.
All that to
The
say.
NCAA, yeah, all that to say that. So the NCAA maybe didn't do the best job of this whole situation, negotiating TV rights, adapting with changing of times. They did not always look to gouge networks, and I don't mean that in a negative sense. They didn't always pit networks against each other to get the best price. Sometimes they just said, hey, whoever had the current contract, hey, we think we should up it to here. They would go with the first offer. The network would agree, and they just move on with life without actually taking the rights to market. Not necessarily the best way of doing business. So some teams and some schools got upset. And eventually, several big name schools are going to create an association of their own to attempt to subvert the NCAA rules. And it's going to be called the very creative College Football Association.
Wow.
It's the CFA, not Chick-fil-A, College Football Association. And the CFA immediately gets a deal with NBC. The NCAA at the time was working with CBS and ABC. College Football Association goes to NBC, very similar to some of the rights fuss that we have going on in current times. What's old is new again. And the NCAA, whose president was ruling with an iron fist at the time, he wasn't going to be a toothless organization. He threatened the schools in the CFA that they would be given disciplinary action in all sports, not just football, if they played a game on TV on NBC, which leads to Oklahoma and Georgia suing on behalf of all members of the CFA, arguing that the NCAA was violating antitrust law. Essentially, they were saying that they were fixing the price by not actually taking the rights to market and getting a fair price for them. And they were also indicating that the threat against the CFA is what's called a group boycott. And this is when you threaten that somebody can't do business with you if they do business with X, Y, or Z. You're technically not allowed to do this. In this case, they're arguing that they could not do business with NBC, or the NCAA wouldn't do business with them if they do business with NBC. And they're saying that because the NCAA does business with CBS and ABC, and those are all competitors. So it makes it this weird. That's confusing, but it's this weird thing where you're not allowed to make people boycott other companies. And so this all is kind of important because the NCAA is not exempt from antitrust law. There was a Supreme Court case that once declared that baseball was not interstate commerce. It was, I don't know, I don't understand how you argue.
I don't
that.
either.
I do get it in some sense. The teams are all in individual states, and so the games are in individual states, and no money actually.
Anyway.
But anyway, they argued that the Supreme Court case decided that baseball was exempt because it was not interstate commerce, and so federal law didn't apply to it. And for a couple of decades, people took that to mean that all sports were that way, but a later Supreme Court case clarified that that was just baseball, not anything else somehow. And so the NCAA is not exempt from antitrust laws. They have to follow the rules. And the case makes its way to the Supreme Court, where, tying this all together now, Byron White is a justice that gets to hear this case. He is. Have you ever had your hand in the dirt? He is that kind of guy, right? So he is able to give some experiential guidance during this case, and so the actual ruling was that the NCAA had violated antitrust law. They were price fixing. They were not following the rules that were in the antitrust legislation, mostly because they had not provided enough reason why they should be allowed to restrain trade. There are plenty of reasons why you can create a monopoly or near monopoly given reasonable, I was going to say reasonable doubt. That's not right. But there are reasonable reason that you can have a monopoly or near monopoly. The NCAA in the court's eyes did not provide that. And that one justice actually said, if your argument is that you want to keep a level playing field, that the NCAA had done a terrible job of preventing an elite in college football. So like, if this is your argument, it isn't working. So then just let everybody bid for all the games you want. Byron White, however, had a different view on the case, and it was a very prescient view on the case. He argued and wrote the dissenting opinion. There were only 2 votes, no or against the University of Georgia and Oklahoma. Everybody else voted to lean towards their case. In his dissent, he argued essentially that pro sports and college sports were 2 different things, and that while pro sports exist to make the most money possible, and that is their goal, while also presenting a competitive product, college sports had a goal that was altogether different in that they needed to integrate academics and athletics. And to do that, they needed to keep a level playing field. He argued essentially that in the NCAA, the Supreme Court, in various rulings, had allowed the NCAA to restrict the number of assistant coaches schools could hire. They can restrict the number of scholarships that each school is allowed to give, and they can restrict the acquisition of players who had been paid for playing the sport to keep a level of amateurism in. And all of those things were done so that a school that had a ton of money couldn't use that advantage to leverage success on the field. They all had to play by the same rules, which is why the amateur rules exist, is so that you couldn't go get Jim Thorpe and pay him $500,000 in today's money to come be on your team as an Olympic gold medalist because you want to and you have the money, right? Like, that's why these rules exist. So he's saying if those rules exist, this rule is for the same reason, so that this school doesn't get a ton of money and just go off the rails spending it to win. The competition should be on the field, not at the bank, was essentially his idea. He said, by mitigating what appears to be a clear failure of the free market to serve the ends and goals of higher education, the NCAA ensures the continued availability of a unique and valuable product, the very existence of which might well be threatened by unbridled competition in the economic sphere. In other words, if we go out here just spending money, we're going to ruin this completely.
Enter name, image, and likeness.
I think
when a college football payroll, when a college football program has a payroll in the 9 figures, that's exactly what's happening.
At least that money isn't coming from the school, but it still is.
Yeah, like, what's the difference? They're still getting enticed to come and play the school because the school is in the pockets of its, like the program is in the pockets of the school, who's in the pockets of its donors, who was made rich by whatever. And to me, it all still it's the same thing.
Yeah,
like he said, you start paying college players like they're pros, you're going to ruin the amateurism aspect of college sports, and college sports is going to now be not amateur at all. You're getting paid to play.
So I don't know that's probably not wrong. I don't necessarily disagree. I think that he would have gone bigger and would have said that if you have this level of money involved in college sports with no one managing it, that it's going to go off the rails anyway. Because even if we don't have NIL, then we have the Big Ten signing a $1 billion TV contract, and that money's still going to the school, and they're still spending it on what exactly? Like, what are they? What are we spending? What is the athletic department spending $100 million? And in this case, it's going to be like $50 extra million a year. What are they spending it on? Right? Like, what do they need extra that costs that much? So I think that would be part of what he's saying. But yeah, NIL would fit in that as well.
And to be clear, like, if I believe that college players should be allowed to, like, they should be able to make money because, like, their name, their image, and their likeness is worth something. Like, it's theirs and it's worth something. And I do somewhat agree with the free labor argument, right? Like, they don't have time to go out and work, and so why not let them, like, let I don't know, let Drake May be sponsored by Bojangles and like get some
Mhm.
free chicken every once in a while and some cash on the side for recording some stuff for him. Like that, cool. But it does only that's outside of the school. Like the school's not involved. Like the school's not handing them the money. The school is not depositing it into their account. When the school, I don't know. It's a very
Yeah,
slippery slope. But all that to say, the fact that Byron White saw this, like this is the most impressive part to me. The fact that he on that on the Supreme Court, and this was 1984, early 83 or 84 or early
yeah. By the
80s.
time they ruled, yeah, 84.
Uh, the fact that he was sitting on this thing with all the experience that he had in sports and all of his life knowledge and wiseness is not a word, with everything that he knew to be true,
Could be.
everything that he believed to be true, he saw it this way that long ago is incredible. Like he might have been the smartest person on the Supreme Court with regard to this, in my opinion. He might actually, if he was alive today and he sat down in an NCAA boardroom and tried to talk them through how to do this, he'd still be the smartest person in the room. Like they haven't learned anything over the last 40 years.
Yeah,
It's nuts. Like regardless of how you feel, like that, in my opinion, your
yeah.
opinion, cool. The fact that he thought this
He
that
knew it.
long
Yeah.
ago, like it's coming. It's going to be weird. People are going to hate it, and it's not going to be the same ever again.
And immediately he's right. Immediately he's right. So the College Football Association was the SEC, Big East, ACC, Southwestern Conference, the WAC, and most of the independents. Remember, this is the 80s and 90s. The Big Ten and the Pac 10 at the time did not participate in this. As soon as they were able, they negotiated their own packages with ABC. And it was only if a couple of years. This ruling was 84. By 1991, Notre Dame said, okay, we're going to do our own thing. So their home games are on NBC. 4 years later, the SEC and the Big East said, we're out. They went and signed contracts on their own with CBS for football. The whole College Football Association itself folded in 1997. So this only lasts 16 years total, 13 after the ruling. And then when it's gone, that is when we get the mass realignment. There'd been realignment before, but it was realignment based on Georgia Tech doesn't like what the SEC's doing. They'd rather be independent, so they go independent. Arkansas doesn't like being the only school not in Texas in the Southwestern Conference, so they start looking somewhere else to go, and the SEC stumbled into a championship game situation. That's what was alignment driven at the time. As soon as this happens, the next round of realignment after the College Football Association folds is that 2003 alignment where the ACC raids the Big East,
Kills it,
and then does it again, kills it. The Big Ten takes an ACC team, and then we get everybody moving everywhere. We've killed rivalries. We've nuked any kind of regional interest in the sport, right? People are Alabama fans in Wisconsin
why?
and North
Yeah, why?
Carolina, and for what? And so we've just destroyed, just like he said, by embracing this. We've got the SEC. And I know we're kind of giving them some stuff here, but we've got the SEC and Big Ten legitimately rumored to want to go to as big as 20 teams and to isolate themselves almost like an AFC, NFC. That is completely opposed to what college football has ever been, and maybe something that people reject, again, because professional football already exists and it's better than college football.
And it's all for money, right? Like the whole the
And it's
whole
all
the
for
whole
money.
point
All
the
for
whole
money.
point in
Yeah.
this in any of this is money. And like we've talked plenty of times ourselves about how money is infiltrating, or how money and TV is infiltrating college and pro sports for that matter, and how weird and unregulated and like it just seems like it just sucks in a lot of ways. But the fact that White saw this, there's another quote we found. I'm going to read to you real quick. He said, quote, "When these values are factored into the balance, The NCAA's television plan seems eminently reasonable. Most fundamentally, the plan fosters the goal of amateurism by spreading revenues among various schools and reducing the financial incentives towards professionalism. He understood the difference between the two and how important it was. And these TV money deals are just slowly but surely taking that away in a lot of ways.
Yeah, because and back to the previous point, I guess, without NIL, we still have every state's wealthiest state employee, either the college football or college basketball coach of the biggest university in the state. That's ridiculous. We still have Nick Saban, who is limited to the number of coaches he can hire, but has the unlimited supplies to hire every disgraced loser that he can find to be an analyst.
Offensive, defensive, special teams, water team, like everything. All of it. There's 60 people in that room. He's crazy.
And none of them talk to a player. None of them are allowed to speak to a single player. They just look at tape, which is the most time-consuming part of the job, which means now all of your coaches don't have to look at tape. They can just go with what somebody else is seeing. They're making recruiting calls. Who's got the best recruiting classes every year? The schools teams that have coaches that go watch players play all week because they don't actually have to be doing some of the job that coaches do. It is absolutely ruining it. He was right. And the wild thing about this is the NFL puts all of their games together and it's bidded out in packages. And that doesn't break antitrust legislation. Major League Baseball has national games that you're not allowed to sell as a team. You're not allowed to sell those to your local market. And if sometimes they can get picked up late in the season and your local affiliate loses a game. That doesn't break antitrust laws. Every league does this. Why was the NCAA not allowed to sell games? They could have done a better job of it, obviously, but why could they not sell packages of games on behalf of their members the same way other leagues do? I'm not sure that I understand that. And so now we get this situation where everybody pulls conferences together. And so Florida State wants to leave the ACC, not because the ACC sucks for them, because they could make more money somewhere else. That's irrelevant to sports.
Yeah, it should not be about factors off the field or off the court. It should be right. It should be like, oh, we've won the conference 27 straight years, and like an App State or a James Madison is like, FCS is just not for us anymore. Like let's go find something else, right? Else. I don't know. I don't think they left for money. I think they were like, we won 3 straight championships, and like, maybe it just isn't as fun anymore. Like we can make the jump. I'm sure money was somewhere in there, but like,
oh yeah, for sure, they still get more.
Yeah, so I don't know. It is weird, but all in all,
but it also makes you ask the question. Fox shows Big Ten games. ESPN shows SEC games. So if you're watching a show on those channels, are they pumping up SEC teams so that you'll watch the SEC game, or are they pumping up Big Ten games so that you'll watch
the characters in the backs of like your crime dramas are wearing SEC school shirts? Like,
yeah.
Subliminal advertising.
Yeah, you've got huge media arms that are doing this. And AP voters are media members.
Yep.
And some of them work for ESPN. And some of them work for Fox and NBC. And now you're questioning their integrity, not because they're bad people, but because the system makes you do it.
It's tough.
That's not helpful for anybody.
No.
And he knew it. He knew it ahead of time because he's the smartest.
It's incredible. Absolutely incredible. Yeah. He could have been Byron White could have been the best at absolutely anything. I'm convinced. That's all. 100%. That's all I have to say about that.
Oh man! Well, happy second birthday. That was a good. It was a good second anniversary present there.
All right.
That's right. Thanks for listening to us. If you got any ideas, any thoughts, any concerns, any stuff you want us to do, give us some heads up on our email or on social media. Let us know what you're thinking. and we'll be glad to do a story for you. Until next time, thanks for listening.
Bye. Thank you for listening to this episode of What You Don't Know About Sports. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please leave us a review, 5 stars only please, and hit that subscribe button wherever you listen. If you have a great sports story, we want to hear about it. You can connect with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WYDKAS Podcast, and on our YouTube channel at What You Don't Know About Sports Podcast. All episodes are written, recorded, and edited by us. Stay tuned for the next episode.